the last couple of days, anybody that's been here since yesterday morning, A, sick of the sight of me, and B, sick of the sound of me. So we're going to have an hour now where I don't say anything. Kel's breeze. So can I introduce to you Finlay MacDonald, who is going to talk to us for the next hour about a portfolio career. And all of the speakers that we've had over the last couple of days have all spoke about this concept that working in creative and cultural arts, that you kind of do a wee bit of everything. You might do a bit of management, a bit of administration, a bit of the creative, a bit of different things that you pull it all together. And Finn's a really good example of somebody who is working professionally and has a full career within the music industry, but does lots of different things within it. So he's head of piping studies between the Piping Centre and the Royal Conservatoire of Scotland. He plays, composes, teaches. He does a bit of festival management. The festival that he curates is called Piping Live. He is the musical director for shows and has done shows across Europe, for example, in Switzerland and Italy. And he is here to talk to you today about managing a portfolio career. Finlay.
Thank you very much, Anne. So, hello everyone. I guess my plan for today really was just to chat in general about creativity and your career and what you can do with that, and how you can kind of access it and try and make it work for you in your professional life, because I think that whole idea of being in the creative arts is quite a difficult thing to get your head round in many ways. Can I just ask, for you guys that are here, what are you guys doing mostly?
I do
history of art.
And I do media management.
Yep. Same. Anything else? Any other? Film and TV. Yep. Music. Yep. What are you guys? Yep. Same. Theatre. Great. You guys?
University of Ljubljana Career Centre.
Okay. Very good. Welcome. So yeah. So you all do different things with your creativity, and for me, I guess I started off playing music, not really with any intention of it being my career. It was just something I did and I really enjoyed, and I guess that's a really integral part of still what I do. I still have to enjoy it, or I really can't do it. I struggle with doing things I don't enjoy, and that's something that when I started off playing, if I was to think now about what I do in my portfolio career, and I never actually knew there was such a thing or a name as portfolio career until I actually thought about it a few years ago. It was just something I did all the time. I worked and played, and I struggle to see the definition between work and music and enjoyment, and I still do. And I don't really want to have a big definition there between work and music, because to me it's both are the same thing for me. It's a vocation in the true sense of the word. So when I started playing, I just did it because I loved the sound of it, and I just wanted to play, and I loved what I could see happen with the social side of it. And again, for me, that's still very important. But then the point came where I started getting more into it. I started playing more, getting a bit better. And by the time I was in fourth, fifth, sixth year at school, I really was quite struggling to think about what I wanted to do, when one of my teachers or the careers officer at the school was saying, sat down, so what are you going to do? And I was like, I don't have a clue. I like playing music, and that's about all I want to do. When I thought about the actual classes, I did okay. I had reasonable results, but none of it really excited me other than music. So I guess I was quite lucky that with the practice I did and the amount of playing I did, I got okay at it and started writing my own music and doing some gigs. And at that time, because I'm in traditional music, that path was absolutely kind of uncharted, really. There wasn't an academic qualification for traditional music. And again, if you think about it in its true sense, traditional music has existed forever, and now we're trying to like make it an academic subject. So there was a bit of a slight imbalance at that time. I started at the Royal Academy, RSAMD, in 1996, and that was the first time there had ever been a course for traditional music. It was a BA in Scottish music, it was called at that time. So when I saw that being advertised, it was just as I was about to leave school, but it wasn't until the following year. So I took a year out and just played more, travelled more, did more gigs, and auditioned and was accepted into the RSAMD in 1996. So that was like my first real sense of studying this music in a, if you like, academic institution. And I loved it. It was a great experience. There was lots of talk around that situation about the real kind of purists in the folk world were saying you shouldn't be studying traditional music because it defeats the whole purpose. It's traditional. It's passed on by the oral tradition and it survives organically. So why are you going to study it? You're going to make it academic. And some of the classical critics or the kind of the classical snobs, if you like, were saying traditional music in the Royal Academy, this is a disgrace. You know, these guys can't even read music, which many of us couldn't at the time because we learn by ear mostly. We do ear training fundamentally as our way we learn. So there was all this going on all around the kind of start of this course. But actually, what I very quickly realised when I started was that we're all the same. All the musicians I met and all the actors and actresses and production guys, we're all the same. I've got this idea about following something that you want to do and something that kind of you need to do because it's your creative path. And I think that for me became very evident when I was surrounded with a whole institution full of people like that. So this is just a bit of a kind of story of how I got into this. And so during that whole time, I realised that, you know, I was in this traditional music course. There was the orchestral course. There was actors. There was other, but actually, none of that mattered because it was about making music and being creative. And again, this is how do you be creative? We'll look at that later. But again, it just didn't occur to me to do anything else. And I don't know if any of you guys feel like that. Do you have that sense that kind of just makes sense? And I think that's a really secure place to be. It can also be a very frightening place to be because in my job now, I get asked a lot of times at open days and Q&A sessions, mostly by parents. You know, they've got very talented children who want to come and study at the Conservatoire or the National Piping Centre. And the big question is, well, what are they going to do when they graduate? And my answer always is, I don't know. I've got no idea. Because this path that they're choosing is not one which is absolutely set in stone. And I think even the wider educational system now is broadening out like that. I remember when I started, a lot of my friends were doing law, and it was just like absolutely set. You go and you study law, and you become a lawyer. You might become a media lawyer, or a construction lawyer, or a divorce lawyer, but it was very set, kind of guaranteed career path. But we don't have that, and I guess a lot of you guys won't have that. But I think you have to embrace that and realise that's kind of the beauty of it, and understand that there'll be times when you really question that and maybe wish that you'd done law or something like that, because you'll have moments of kind of almost panic. What have I done? You know, there's a great story about my pal who runs the music in Newcastle University, and he was doing well. And about this time of year, a few years ago, and one of his students who was graduating with his honours degree, first class honours, great. I think he was a fiddle player on their folk music course, and he he asked for a meeting with Simon, my friend, who was the head of the course, and he said, I've got a bit of a problem here. And Simon's like, well, you've done really well, you've got a first-class honours, exemplary record. He said, yeah, that's all fine, but I told my dad I was studying accountancy. And this was like a week before graduation, so he was trying to build up the courage to tell his dad that he actually had been studying folk music for 4 years rather than accountancy. But I'm not quite sure how that ended up, but it's that idea of he just had to do it. That was his thing, and he maybe should have been a bit more upfront with his parents, but it's quite a funny kind of anecdote anyway. And so the idea of creativity in this portfolio career, again, really didn't occur to me until fairly recently, if I'm honest. Like, I don't know, 5 years ago that I actually really thought about it, because I'd always just done it. Even when I was studying, and I think this is the important thing, one of the things I've got to really kind of hit home is that it starts as soon as you've decided you want to do this. Whether it's music or film and TV or production or media, anything, I think once you decide you're going to do this, then everything you do is like focused on that. And I don't mean you have to spend your life networking, but just being aware of everything that happens around you. So when I was studying, I was also teaching at the weekends in a music centre out in the south side. So I was doing teaching on a Saturday morning. I was doing some private tuition. I was being asked to go and do gigs all the time. I was playing probably 10 gigs a month or something like that. The teaching, I was doing teaching things at the Faish movement, which is mostly in the Highlands, where they promote Gaelic song and culture and music. So I was kind of doing that alongside my studies. And I think if you can do that as well, then it's a really beneficial way. You're building your career from day one that you decide that's what you want to go for. And that in itself, I still have relationships with people and organisations that I met as I was starting my kind of academy career. So it's really important that you think about everyone you meet and the whole cycle of your kind of path, and you might meet people who go on to become people that might employ you another time, or might be your colleague, or you might want to work with and be open with. So I think that's what I realised when I really thought about it. And for me, so I was doing it all the time. I was doing gigs, I was writing music, I was studying, and again, the parameters were very kind of loose there between studying and working, and we try and really encourage that now at the Conservatoire and the Piping Centre, because if we're, the logic comes in that if we're trying to train people to be professional musicians, then they have to be playing music the whole time they're studying with us. It's very simple when you think about it like that. When I was studying, it wasn't quite the case. We had to fill in permission slips to go and do a gig. Well, officially we were meant to do that, but it didn't always happen, because there was this idea of us representing the establishment, so they had to make sure that we were good enough to do the gigs, but we were all just doing it all the time anyway, because it just was part of our life. So I graduated in '99, and shortly after that I was asked to go and play at the Las Palmas Jazz Festival in Gran Canaria as part of a kind of fusion jazz folk thing that was happening. So I did that, and that probably was a bit of a catalyst for lots of other things happening for me, because I'd been writing and working with some jazz musicians while I was studying, and this idea of mixing the two things was really quite exciting for me. So I met lots of great jazz musicians, and we played some really cool gigs. And after that, I got a phone call from a guy called Simon Tumier, who now runs a thing called Hands Up for Trad, which is a great organisation who promote lots of traditional music in different ways. They run the Musician of the Year Awards, the Traditional Music Awards, and he also ran a record label at the time called Stomping, So he asked me to do an album with them. So I had the kind of 2-album deal, which at the time I thought was just like, great. You know, kick the shoes off, sit back, I've got a 2-album deal, that's fine. But I very quickly realised that that's just the very start of it. So I made my first album with a lot of the kind of jazz guys, and then kind of put a band together, did lots of touring, travelling, still doing the teaching, still doing other kind of gigs, Kayleys, whatever, just trying to do lots of different things. So I very quickly realised that I was never going to just be in a band and that would be my job. I would have quite liked that, but you can't survive on that most of the time. Now, there's always exceptions to that. The kind of lucky guys that have a band and they become really famous and that's great. Like, we would all love that. But for the majority, we have to look at different things. So I made 2 albums with Foot Stomping, and the band, at that point, we were travelling a lot, probably 4 or 5 months of the year, travelling all over the world. And I was doing that at the start through a manager and an agent. And again, these kind of relationships that you build are really important. But then it wasn't until kind of realising, there's a kind of financial thing that comes into it as well. And this is, I guess, specific to music if you're making albums and doing record deals. But the whole world, and especially in the traditional music scene, has changed in terms of albums and recordings, as it has in every genre, where I was just thinking about this before I came in. When you look at it, it just didn't really make much sense for us to do it with a record label, because they, if you like, paid for the album to be recorded, whatever that cost, and then produced, and we went and did gigs and tours to sell the album. Now that kind of seems fine, but the fact is, at that time, record sales from shops was declining all the time. So the only place it was really being sold was us out doing gigs. And we were selling a lot of CDs on tour in America and all over Europe. But then you think about the actual numbers of that, and we have to buy the CD from the record label, which costs us £6.50, and then we sell it for £12. So you're looking at £5.50 per album, and there's 6 of us in the band, and you divvy that up and you get less than £1 each per album, and we're the ones out on tour selling it and doing it. So again, the thing that I never ever wanted to think about was like business in music, but you kind of have to when you realise that you're making no money, and the record label are still making their £6.50 an album. It's all paid back. So I did one more album with another label, and it was kind of the same. And I'm not saying that the labels are bad in any way, it's just the way the industry was at the time. So after that, about that point, I started teaching more at the piping centre. A couple of different things, a small pipe class, a couple of days a week, helping out the schools. And then just kind of built that up and started doing more of that, on top of still doing gigs and making albums. But by the time we did the 4th album, we self-funded. So we just got some money together from myself and a fiddle player, and made it ourselves and formed our own label. So that all the money and all the production costs, everything was ours, but we owned it. I think that's really important as well, as ownership in the creative industries. Your intellectual property, your physical ownership of your work is really important, and I would say really get to grips with that side of it as well for any music or plays or anything you're writing. Just get everything really sorted and make sure that you feel comfortable with ownership in terms of your material, because it's that stuff that is very hard to define, but you have to look after that side of your business as well. So already in the kind of portfolio thing, we're looking at, playing music. That sometimes ends up kind of down here in terms of the amount I do. And there'll be teaching, there'll be getting artwork together for a poster or an album, or writing music for someone else, or managing the festival Piping Live, or meetings about projects and lots of different things, travel, booking other musicians. It's like a huge thing, business registering music. And so all of a sudden, from this, 20 odd years ago, thinking, I just want to play music because I like it, now there's probably about a dozen things involved with that I have to kind of juggle and do different things with. But I love it. I love doing that. And I wouldn't really want to do it any other way. So I guess some of the other things that I ended up doing just because, and I think that is the thing that some people struggle to get their head around, is like, just do it. Sometimes it feels like, this is a bit weird. What am I doing here? The amount of times I've been in that scenario is like unbelievable, where you say yes to something and you go, oh no, what am I doing here? But actually, again, that's kind of the beauty of it. You end up in some really strange and wonderful situations. So again, about the same time, just after I left, I got a phone call from a production company who had seen me play at a gig somewhere else, that asked me to go for a screen testing to do a movie with Robert Duvall that was being filmed in Scotland at the time. So I went along. I'd been playing at the Glasgow Jazz Festival the night before, went along, and there was a whole panel of casting directors and lots of different people, and I had a chat with them, and Robert Duvall was there, and I didn't realise until like 10 minutes later that he was actually on this panel. And so I ended up doing that for like 3 weeks, doing a move, like shooting this movie and playing on it. And again, that's just like one of these things. You have to be willing to just say yes to things. And even if you think it might be a bit bonkers, then that's probably the best thing you can do, is do something that's a bit bonkers, because you'll learn from it. So lots of different things. I've got this clip here I wanted to show you because it kind of like totally makes sense to me, and everything I guess I'm trying to say about the kind of fears you may have and the questions you may have about what you're doing here. Right? 2 years ago at our graduation ceremony, David Tennant was awarded an honorary doctorate, and he studied at the Academy, the Conservatoire, and he made a brilliant acceptance, or a kind of speech. It lasted about 3 or 4 minutes, but I'm going to put it on, and we might kind of ask some questions and chat about it after this. So, all know David Tennant, the actor, Doctor Who. Yeah. So here he goes.
I don't know what you do with the bonnet and the... Very nice.
Did you hear that?
Thank you. Thank you, Hugh, and thank you, Alan, for all your lovely words. I mean, you make me blush. And thank you, Doris, thank you. Everyone's a critic. No, I'm very humbled and rather gobsmacked. I'd rather had the breath taken out of me. Thank you for that wonderful performance as well. That was brilliant. I wish I'd seen that before I did Much Ado About Nothing, because that's clearly how you do it. I look forward to seeing you in a full production before too long. It's quite hot being clever, isn't it? As an actor who has managed to join the jobs up reasonably successfully for a number of years, you do often get asked for advice, which I suppose is absolutely understandable in an industry that has no apparent logical career path or sequence of promotion. Those starting out are looking for the map. You're looking for the key that's going to unlock the door to the secret club. The distribution of spoils in the acting profession seems so random, so often unconnected to ability or to merit. And there appears to be no justice. The hardest working are too often overlooked for the careless and the lazy. So I absolutely understand the desire for a nugget of clarity, for something that will cast some light, that will throw a chink of illumination into the murk, because it's scary. It's scary where you all are now. Scary to be entering into a profession that seems illogical. And there must be something you can intuit to give yourself a chance, or an advantage, some hope. So I am often asked for advice, and I almost always don't give any. because it doesn't make sense. It's horribly unfair. It's impossible to plan your life, murderously difficult to get a mortgage or support a family, and the uncertainty and the insecurity that it feeds you with on a daily basis can sometimes be asphyxiating. And that doesn't go away, I'm afraid. 25 years after I graduated from this place, I still feel like every job I manage to snag is going to be my last one, and that every good review is just a stay of execution, that any day now I'll be tapped on the shoulder by the acting police, told I've been found out and asked to surrender my equity card. Or get an equity card, unions, we need them. So in thinking about what I might say today, or to inspire, at the very least inform, the next generation of Scotland's actors, I find myself scrabbling around for a few certainties that I've managed to distill from hawking myself around for the last quarter century. I think I have three. So, in the interest of full disclosure, here they are. Number one, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Some of your classmates will take off in a blaze of glory. They will be courted by agents, by casting directors. They'll be deluged with offers of leading parts, film roles, television series. Their stratospheric rise will leave you feeling lost and insecure. Perhaps more of you will tick along, picking up occasional acting jobs, making ends meet with part-time jobs, not setting the West End ablaze or bothering BAFTA just yet, but you'll feel like you're still in the game, however irregularly. And then some of you will struggle. The phone will not ring. You might be spending more time behind the counter in Starbucks than you are in audition rooms for a wee while. Whatever group you fall into, just keep breathing. Everyone has a different moment. There's not a whole lot you can do about that. But what are you in it for? Do you want to burn brightly for a couple of years and then spend the next 40 wondering where the first-class flights went? Or do you want to still be acting when you're 75, full of stories to bore drama leavers with? It's a marathon, not a sprint. Number two, don't be late, learn your lines, and be nice. Because there are plenty of actors who don't do any of those things, and some of them are very successful, but they don't get asked back. And the second their stock drops, they disappear without trace. The runner that brings you a coffee next week will be running the BBC in 10 years' time. Be nice. Be on time. Learn your lines. Everything else is forgivable. Number three, if there's anything else you think you can do, then do that. It's not a job for the sane. It's not a job for the equivocal. You'll probably be skint, miserable, and eaten up with jealousy for a large proportion of your time. So if you can, spare yourself all that, be nice to yourself, and do something else. But if you can't, if you really, really have to, then good luck. And I realise I'm striking a slightly pessimistic tone with that last one, but that's what people do. They will try to put you off. It's pragmatic and sensible to do so. I don't apologise for it. But here's the secret. There's another reason people do that, and it's because they're jealous. And I'm jealous too. I'm jealous of you all starting out and beginning your life in this profession that's given me so much joy and so much fulfilment, that has given me a wife and a family, and yes, even eventually a mortgage. It's a wonderful journey that you have ahead of you. Because what a joy, what a privilege it is to tell stories, to thrill people, to move people, to help people understand the world around them, to take people into their dreams and to expand their horizons, to challenge people and to just make the world a wee bit better. So you're here, this is it. You set out today and it's all potential. What larks ahead? It might be a bit shitty from time to time, but it's not like you're qualified to do anything else. So keep breathing. Above all else, enjoy yourselves. Remember, it's all nonsense. And whatever else you do, don't give advice. Thank you very much.
So, I thought that was a really interesting speech. What did you think of that? Does any of it ring true with you guys at the moment? Yeah. What parts of it? Yeah. 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 But any other thoughts?
The fact that it's a marathon, that's fine.
Yeah.
I don't know how to get it now, but
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say something. Sprint was like, it's quite interesting and highlight different groups of people which are like at different stages, and despite that, like I've spoken to different people who, well, there's so many different, factors that factor into how people are sort of looking for it in their careers. So, let yourself consume those resources too much.
Mhm.
So that's going to be like something really, I guess, debilitating to do that.
Yeah. Definitely. I think that's absolutely true. Yeah. Any other thoughts, questions about that? And I think the kind of tongue-in-cheek side of it, or the slightly humorous, pessimistic thing, kind of makes a bit of sense to me because, again, if you go back to the very start, I remember one of my friends saying, we were skint doing a gig somewhere for, I think it was 75 quid between us doing a Cayley, so I can't remember. It was like, if we had really wanted to make lots of money very quickly, surely there are way more efficient ways of doing that. So, and we kind of realised that at the time. I'm not saying that you can't make money, and you shouldn't, but this is where the idea of doing lots of different things comes into play, because when the gigs are rolling in, then you can think of nothing else. I'm just doing gigs and it's great fun and we're travelling all over the world, and then that might not happen because you've not done the next album, or you've done that round the gigs for a while, and then the promoters, and again, like I know myself, are looking for different bands because you can't have the same band at the same festival every time. So there's kind of natural cycles that I've kind of found that happen, and there's other people who end up doing all the gigs, but again, I think just knowing that happens should be some kind of solace that when you are up here, it's like great, it's amazing, and there's no better feeling. But when you're down here and there's no gigs, and I know gigs, it might be different things. It could be writing, it could be directing, any of the things that you guys are doing. It feels kind of bad to see everyone else doing that, but it does go in cycles. So when the gigs aren't happening, you might do more teaching, or when you're doing too much teaching, you might try and do some more gigs, and just try and kind of balance it out in some way, and having, again, relationships with people within the industry that you can go to and work with, I think is really important. What's it you do yourself? Yeah. Yeah. So what, if you were to think, if Plan A worked for you, what would you be doing when you graduate? Yeah. So are you ready? Are you meeting people in that? Yeah. Good. Anyone else? What was your what's like? If I could wave a magic wand, what would you be doing when you graduate? Yeah. What are you doing? Yeah. 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 Well, I was the same. You know, I was like, the only kind of certainty I had when I was studying was that I just wanted to play music. I remember actually on my kind of exit interview with my head of department, she said, "So what are your plans now?" And I was like, "I'm just going to go and do gigs all the time." And she said, "Well, do you not fancy doing any teaching?" And I was like, "Nah, I'm not going to end up doing teaching." And 20 years later, I'm doing lots of teaching, and you know, I have done different kind of levels of teaching throughout that 20 years. So I think being adaptable to change and being willing to, as I said earlier, just give something a go. If an opportunity comes, then I would go for it 9 times out of 10, unless you really think it's something that's going to be bad for your career. But I think at the end of the day, what I tell my students is get out there and do it. Do as much as you can, because that's the best way to learn. Keep doing it. Keep trying different things. And it will happen. It's an interesting life. It sometimes can be difficult. Sometimes can be amazing. But I think I mean, you've all chosen this path now anyway, so as David Tennant said, you're not qualified for anything else, so just get on with it and just do it. There's a great book I was reading recently by Elizabeth Gilbert. You know that, the Big Magic book? Have you read that? Anyone? You should have a look at that. It's called Creative Living Beyond Fear. And she's got lots of great little stories and anecdotes about this very thing. And again, this idea of creativity, what is it and why do we do it? And the kind of looking at other people who seem very creative. And she talks about this idea, which I find really interesting, of the kind of perception of creativity. And a lot of the time, when we look at it, or before we kind of think in this way about it, we might think about creativity as a bolt of lightning. So it's just something that happens, and you are creative, and you have creative ideas, and that's it. And you put your cravat to the side and you be creative, and that's all amazing. But actually, we shouldn't think about it like that, because that's generally not how it happens. Think about, and what she talks about in her book is, it's about a trail of breadcrumbs rather than a bolt of lightning. So it's about being curious, being interested in things. That's what's going to lead to the bigger things. And when I think about it in my situation, it really rings true, because I didn't just end up playing bagpipes on a stage in front of thousands of people. It's not just like, oh, I'm good at this. I practiced for years, learned thousands of tunes, built up relationships with hundreds of people, and writing music. I write quite a lot of music for different shows. I get commissioned to write things. That's not just like one day I woke up and I've got the best piece of music ever in the world. There's a whole 30 years worth of trying different things, and I've still got bits of music, and you might have story ideas, or you might have production ideas, or that, like, it's literally 2 or 3 notes, and they just kind of sit there for years. And I've got like a recording bank of all these different little things and some scores, and at some point I know it's going to happen, and I've kind of used that as a kind of toolbox and a bank of ideas musically, creative ideas, and sometimes they'll work right away, and other times they sit there for a long time, and I'll just think about it, and something comes up that then makes me think differently about that thing. So then it becomes a new idea from your original thought. So keep being interested in things. I still remember the first times when I started playing pipes. And I use that as my kind of drive sometimes when I'm getting a bit tired or a bit bored or something, or a bit frustrated with something. And I remember that feeling of like total excitement when I first got on the pipes. And like I just want to play more. I want to learn more tunes. I want to do this even more. I love the sound of it. And if I could think then, when I was 15, practicing in my mum and dad's garage, that I would be doing half of the things that I'm doing now, then I'd have been absolutely delighted. So it's that kind of perspective thing about where you're going, and what the work you're doing at the moment being absolutely like fundamental to you as your creativity. So again, don't think about this. It's probably not going to come and hit you like a bolt of lightning. It's going to be by you guys working hard and being interested, being curious about different things. Because I know that feeling of if someone has an idea and they think, well, it just came to me. And it's like, okay, it just came to you. It's not like you've had years of thinking about other things that then lead to that. How are we doing for time, Anthony?
It's almost quarter to.
Okay. So there was one. One of the quotes I was going to use from the book Creative Living was that what is creative living, if you like, and she says it's living a life that's driven more strongly by curiosity than fear. And I think that's a really interesting way to look at it, and a good way to think about it. If you fancy it, give it a go, and I think you should be okay if you do that. Is there any questions about anything kind of in your own careers or mine or general kind of music things? Or yep.
What's your process for when you play music? Do you sit down and think about it for a long time? Or, you said you've got a recording device. Do you just sort of come open and then think about it?
Yeah, it depends really. It changes. Again, because I write music as a job, if you like, but I'm always doing it anyway. So I could be sitting in the train and I might have an idea for a melody, so I'll just record it onto my phone, just sing it into my phone, and then when I get home or get to the office, I might write it on the computer and have a look at it and think. So there's different levels of it where I might just have a melody that I think sounds really cool. But then if I know I've got something coming up, like I did a thing for the Edinburgh Tattoo last year. They asked me to write a piece for, like a 5-minute piece for a dance section they were doing. And so the whole time, for months, I guess I was thinking about, well, what conceptually should I be doing here? So there's this, it's a big filter thing, where I was thinking, you think conceptually first, and how can I make this, my kind of brief was to make it, try and make the Edinburgh Tattoo a bit more contemporary in terms of the dance piece. So what does that actually mean musically, culturally? It's a big task thinking about that one thing. Can you make it more modern or modernise this 5 minutes of music? So that takes a long time just to think about what conceptually we might look at. And then there comes the kind of the ideas stage for melody or for rhythm or instrumentation, production, lighting, all that. And then it starts to kind of narrow in a bit to get the tunes actually kind of refined and the harmony and the rhythm behind that. And actually at the end you've got a piece of music that lasts 5 minutes, but that whole process from concept to completion is years of work, if you like, because you're thinking broadly at first. So that's one level. The other level, I just write tunes a lot. I love playing tunes, and I get ideas for tunes when I'm practicing or playing, so I might just write something different, and I keep that, and even if I think it's terrible, I'll just keep it. And again, our own perception on melody and rhythm and all these things change all the time, so I'll go back to it. On a practical level, I use Sibelius as a scoring program, and I get and play with loads of musicians all the time, because that's again the big inspiration, is hearing other people play and working with other musicians, or go and listen to different gigs. So it's a really broad thing to think about, and sometimes it's good to really be challenged as well when something doesn't quite work. It's like don't just go, oh, well, it's not to be. You know, there's the process of working at it. Again, especially in music and the creative side, people think, well, if it doesn't come to me easily, then it must not be any good. That's not really the case, you know. Composers throughout history have toiled over, you know, one note and a chord or one rhythm in a piece of music for days or weeks or months, years. And that's the kind of level of artistry that has to be involved on some levels, that you're working at something and the frustration comes and then you work it out and then you change it, and just that ability to think differently about it and change as you go. Yeah.
How do you, like doing lots of different things, how do you balance it?
Yeah. Well, it's quite easy for me now because I've got a full-time contract with the National Piping Centre and the Conservatoire, so I'm there pretty much all the time. So the other stuff has to kind of fit around that. Before I was working there, it was just planning ahead really, and just it's that thing, you have to just decide things and do it, put things in the diary and do them. Because when you're your own boss or you're kind of looking after your own employment, then it's easy just to keep putting things off. And I'm certainly terrible at that kind of thing. But just put things in the diary and get them done. And it's like, if you get into that process, then I think, or set yourself targets. I know it sounds really boring, but if you're trying to work towards something, just set yourself a target and don't move from it. I do that a lot with music projects where I've got one just now that isn't happening till September, but I've given myself the deadline of the end of this month to have most of the music done, because it's like I need that, because from May onwards, so it's June onwards it gets really busy, I need to have that finished before it gets really busy. So kind of planning ahead with whatever you're doing is really important. Yep.
See when you're writing, see when you're coming up with ideas, like when you're composing, do you have a certain sort of process that sort of gets you in? Like, are you the sort of person who, like, after the practice, like, does messes about a wee bit, or do you need to sort of, is it a separate thing from practicing and performing, or what do you do to kind of get you in sort of starting to compose?
Yeah. It's a good question. Again, I think it depends on the piece or what I'm trying to write. It's almost harder when you've got a brief, so because it's like you have to actually try and conform to that, or somehow shape the music in a way that's going to keep whoever's paying you for that brief happy, or make the music right for that situation. So that's quite clear, usually quite clear parameters of which you can mould and shape. So that, I would say there's that side of it. So like you write kind of with something very definite in mind, although within that you try and kind of create a new thing. Does that make sense? But then the other side of it is like where you try and push stuff and write something that has that you've never done before and is new for myself. So like thinking about melody or harmony in different ways. So there's that again, like the working side of it, where you're being asked to write something for a purpose, or just making music for music's sake, to satisfy your own curiosity and need to make music. And then there's things in between where, you know, as I say, I just love tunes, so I'm always thinking about tunes when I'm practicing or doing a gig or sitting on the train. I might just think about different combinations of notes or ideas, and then that might, you know, if that's the central thing, then it might go in that way or that way, depending on what is happening at the time. I don't know if that's made any sense, but it's kind of both, you know, to a formula in some way, or absolutely not to a formula in another way. That hopefully that
Yes.
makes a bit of sense. Yeah. Any more questions? No.
Well, can I just say thanks, Finlay? That was there's loads of things there that I've been hearing all of our speakers saying about, make content. If you want to be creative, make content. And one of our speakers yesterday said, doesn't matter how crap it is, just make the content. That will get better.
Yeah.
As long as you keep making, keep creating. But I think the group that we have here, which is maybe different to the group that you work with, Finlay, is that some of you have the potential and the desire to be creative. Some of you are maybe going into some of those other roles, like supporting the creative arts, promoting culture. But I think the messages are exactly the same, to push it and to get to know people and all of that. Finn has been talking about being a professional musician. And I made sure when I was inviting him along today that I made sure that he knew not to come without his pipes. So would you like to hear Finn playing for us? So
Cool,
over to you,
yeah.
Finlay.
I'll play a few tunes. Sorry, the one thing I actually forgot to say that Anne just reminded me of, if we've got time, was that with all our students at the Conservatoire, from day one, we are creating a profile for each student, or they're creating their own profile. So part of the assessment is on blog posts, which then form their own websites or their own social media. And again, just that idea of from day one, everything you do, keep it and log it and blog it and use it, because that's the stuff that's going to build up your portfolio, I guess. So even if it's stuff you did 10 years ago, keep it and use it and keep going back to it. Sorry, I just remembered that. So, I'll just play a tune on the pipes. A couple of tunes.
Any requests?
Thank you.
So that's us for this hour. Anybody, I'm sure, if you've got a wee 10 or 15 or half an hour to hang about, Finlay. So anybody that wants to ask any questions, or if you want to get contact details or connect with Finlay in any way, now's your chance.
And good luck with everything you do. Go for it.